Welcome to Mythology Matters, where ancient narratives reveal a profound connection between history, mythology, and theology. Across history, witches have been feared, misunderstood, and endlessly mythologized. But the real question is rarely asked: why do witches use magic at all? Is it power, survival, rebellion, or something far more psychological hidden beneath the surface of human behavior? In this journey, we step beyond superstition and into the deeper layers of meaning, where magic becomes language, identity, and control over uncertainty itself. What we discover may challenge how we think about belief, reality, and the mind. Thank you for watching, and let's step into the unseen reason beyond witchcraft. Chapter 1. The first need: survival, control, and the language of the unseen. Before witchcraft became a symbol of fear, rebellion, or mystical fascination, it was something far more immediate. A response to survival in an unpredictable world. But understand why witches use magic. One must first step into the conditions that gave birth to magical thinking itself. A world where life was fragile, explanations were limited, and the control over nature was never guaranteed. In such a world, magic was not an escape from reality. It was a way of enduring it. Long before modern science offered frameworks for disease, weather, or psychological suffering, human beings lived in constant proximity to uncertainty. A child could fall ill without explanation. Crops fell without warning. Storms could destroy entire villages in a single night. Death was not an abstract concept, it was a daily possibility. In this environment, randomness was not just inconvenient, it was terrifying. And the human mind does not tolerate chaos easily. Psychologically, humans are pattern-seeking beings. When confronted with events that appear random or uncontrollable, the mind instinctively searches for meaning. If no physical explanation is available, symbolic once emerged. This is where any form of magical thinking takes root. Not as delusion, but as a cognitive survival strategy. Witchcraft, in its rarest and most functional sense, grew from this need to impose structure on the unexplainable. Magic provided a framework where events were not isolated accidents, but connected through intention, balance, and unseen forces. Illness was not merely biological failure. It could be interpreted as imbalance. A failed harvest was not only environmental misfortune. It might reflect disruption in harmony between humans and nature. This symbolic interpretation of reality did something essential. It made the world feel readable. And a readable world is psychologically safer than an unpredictable one. Within this context, witches often emerged as individuals who specialized in navigating the boundary between the known and unknown. They were healers, herbalists, midwives, diviners, and storytellers. People who developed practical knowledge of natural cycles and paired it in with symbolic system of interpretation. Where others saw randomness, they saw patterns. Where others saw suffering, they saw meaning. Magic became the language through which these patterns were expressed. A healing ritual, for example, was not simply an attempt to cure illness through supernatural intervention. It was a strategic act that combined physical remedies, herbs, poultices, rest, with symbolic reinforcement, charts, gestures, timing, intention. In modern terms, one might separate the physical from the psychological. But in early magical systems, these were inseparable. The body and the spirit were part of one continuous system. When a witch performed a healing, she was doing more than treating symptoms. She was restoring a sense of order. This is a crucial point. Witchcraft often functioned less as direct manipulation of external forces and more as a source of perceived balance in communities where illness, death, and misfortune could feel random. The idea of imbalance provided emotional structure. If something was wrong, then it could potentially be corrected. Magic provided the tools for the correction, not always in physical terms, but in symbolic one. But survival was not only about illness or agriculture, it was also about social survival. In many historical contexts, witches occupied marginal or ambiguous social position. They are often women who existed outside dominant power structures. Widows, healers, midwives, or individuals who held knowledge not formally recognized by religious or political authorities. This marginality did not necessarily mean weakness. In many cases, it meant independence. Magic became a form of influence that did not rely on institution permission. A person who could interpret dreams, predict weather patterns, or provide herbal remedies gained authority in ways that were not easily regulated. Even when formal systems dismissed such practices, communities often continued to rely on them. When official explanation failed, alternative one became more compelling. In this sense, witches often functioned as informal problem solvers in environments where formal systems were insufficient. However, the power of witchcraft was not only practical, it was psychological. Human beings are deeply affected by belief. If a community believes that a certain individual has knowledge of unseen forces, that belief alone can alter behavior. People may seek guidance, avoid conflict, and interpret events through the lens of that belief system. Over time, reputation becomes influence, and influence becomes power. This is one reason witchcraft often existed in a tension between fear and respect. The same figure who healed child might also be suspected of causing harm. The same knowledge that soothed suffering could be reinterpreted as dangerous of outcomes were misunderstood. Magic operates in the space where causality is uncertain, and in the space perception becomes reality. Another essential aspect of witchcraft survival function is its role in emotional regulation. Fear, grief, anger, and helplessness are powerful external experiences, especially in environments where external controls is limited. Without structured outlets, these emotions can be overwhelming. Magic provided structure. A ritual could contain a grief by giving it form. A spell could contain hunger by directing it symbolically. A blessing could contain hope by anchoring it in action. Even if these acts did not directly alter external events, they altered internal states in ways that made survival psychologically possible. This is why ritual is so central to magical system. It transforms abstract emotion into organized behavior. In addition, magic created a sense of participation in uncertain outcomes. When people feel powerless, anxiety increases. When they feel involved, even symbolically, anxiety decreases. A farmer performing a rain ritual may not change the weather, but the act itself creates psychological engagement with uncertainty. It transforms passive waiting into active hoping. This shift is perception. This shift in perception is not trivial. It can influence resilience, decision-making, and communal cohesion. Witchcraft also introduced a narrative structure of randomness. Instead of seeing events as disconnected accidents, magical thinking connects them through meaning. This connection does not always follow empirical causality, but it follows psychological coherence. A sickness after a conflict might be interpreted as imbalance. A sudden success might be interpreted as a blessing. These narratives give communities a way to discuss suffering without collapsing into meaninglessness. Importantly, this does not mean witches repressed science or ignored reality. Rather, they operated in a world where scientific frameworks did not yet exist in their modern form. Magic filled a cognitive and emotional gap, one that allowed people to continue functioning in the face of uncertainty. Witches use magic because it allows them to interact with a world that cannot be fully controlled, predicted, or explained. Magic transforms uncertainty from something purely threatening into something symbolically navigable. It creates pathways where none appear to exist. Even today, echoes of this remain in modern behavior. People still perform small rituals before important events. They still seek symbolic meaning in coincidence. They still use structured actions to manage anxiety in uncertain situations. While the language has changed, the psychological foundation remains remarkably constant. In the earliest sense, witches were not masters of supernatural. They are specialists in meaning making under conditions of instability. And magic was their language for surviving a world that refused to stay still. Chapter 2. Transformation, Identity, and Psychology of Hidden Power. Chapter 2. Transformation, Identity, and the Psychology of Hidden Power. If the first foundation of witchcraft is survival in an uncertain world, the second is far more subtle and far more enduring. Witchcraft is not only a response to external instability, but also a method of internal transformation. Magic, in this sense, becomes less about changing the world directly and more about changing the way a person exists within it. This is where witchcraft shifts from survival into something deeper. Identity formation, psychological transformation, and the experience of hidden power. And at its core, human identity is not fixed. It is constructed through experience, belief, repetition, and narrative. People become who they repeatedly act as, who they believe themselves to be, and how they are interpreted by others. Witchcraft operates directly within this fluid space of identity. Rituals, spells, symbols, and practices are not only external actions, they are mechanisms of reshaping the self. When a person performs ritual, they are not simply doing magic. They are stepping into a role. That role may be healer, protector, seer, or conjurer, but each role carries psychological weight. Over time, repeated enactment of these roles begin to alter self-perception. The boundary between performance and identity becomes blurred. This is one of the most important psychological functions of witchcraft. It allows the self to be written through symbolic action. Unlike rigid social identities imposed by culture, magical identity is often flexible, international, and self-anchored. A person who feels powerless in ordinary life may, through ritual practice, construct an inner narrative of agency. Even if external conditions remain unchanged, internal perception shifts. That shifts alone can have profound consequences for behavior, confidence, and decision making. This is why witchcraft is often associated with transformation. It is a structured system for becoming someone else through repeated symbolic acts. But transformation in witchcraft is not limited to the self. It extends to how reality itself is interpreted. In a magical framework, the world is not purely mechanical. It is meaningful, responsive, and symbolically alive. Events are not only causes and effects. They are also messages, reflections, or alignments. This worldview creates what can be described as a psychology of hidden patterns. In this psychology, coincidence is rarely just coincidence. Dreams are not merely neurological activity, but potential sources of insight. Emotions are not isolated internal states, but signals of deeper imbalance or alignment. Even timing becomes meaningful. When something happens can be as important as what happens. This interpretive system does not necessarily require belief in little supernatural forces. Instead, it reflects a way of organizing perception so that experience feel interconnected rather than fragmented. For many practitioners, magic is less about violating natural law and more about recognizing patterns that ordinary awareness might overlook. Within this framework, witches use magic as a tool of heightened perception. Rituals, meditation, and symbolic acts focus attention. They slow down thought processes, increase emotional awareness, and sharpen sensitivity to subtle changes in environment and internal state. This heightened awareness can feel like accessing hidden knowledge, even if what is actually occurring in intensified cognitive and emotion processing. Still, the experience is powerful. When the attention is deeply focused, the mind begins to generate meaning-rich interpretations. A flicker of intuition may feel like guidance. A strong emotion may feel like confirmation. Over time, these experiences accumulate into a sense that reality is speaking back. This is one reason witchcraft is often described as a relationship with the unseen. The unseen does not always mean invisible beings or external forces. It can also refer to subconscious cognition, intuition, and symbolic awareness, layers of perception that operate below everyday awareness. Witches use magic then as a way of engaging with these deeper layers of the mind. Another major dimension of transformation is emotional integration. Human beings often experience emotions that are difficult to express directly: grief, anger, longing, fear, desire. In many social contexts, these emotions are suppressed, redirected, or left unprocessed. Witchcraft provides structured outlets for them. A ritual becomes a container for emotional intensity. A spell becomes a directed expression of desire. A symbolic act becomes a safe way to externalize internal pressure. In this sense, magic is not about suppressing emotion, but organizing it into meaningful form. This organization is psychologically important. Unstructured emotion can feel overwhelming or chaotic. Structured expression, on the other hand, creates a sense of control and clarity. Even if the external world does not change, the internal experience becomes more meaningful. Witchcraft also functions as a mechanism of reclaiming agents in environments where agents feels limited. Historically, many individuals drawn to witchcraft occupied positions where formal power was restricted. This includes women in patriarchal societies, marginalized healers, or individuals excluded from institutional authority. Magic offered a symbolic alternative to those limitations. If direct power was inaccessible, symbolic power became a substitute form of agency. This is where the idea of hidden power emerges. Hidden power in witchcraft is not necessarily a secret domination over others. It is a psychological experience of influence and is not officially recognized by dominant system. A healer whose knowledge is dismissed by formal medicine may still hold authority within a community. A diviner whose insights are unofficial may still shape decisions. A practitioner whose rituals are unseen may still feel deeply empowered by them. This creates a paradox. Even when external systems deny legitimacy, internal experience of power can remain intact or even strengthened. In some cases, the perception of hidden power becomes more significant than overt authority. This is because hidden power is flexible, personal, and self-defined. It does not require institutional validation. It exists through belief, practice, and perceived effect. Another key aspect of transformation through witchcraft is identity separation from ordinary life. Ritual practice often creates a boundary between everyday identity and magical identity. This separation allows individuals to step outside routine roles and enter a different psychological state. In that state, normal constraints feel suspended. Thought becomes more symbolic, imagination becomes more active, and emotional intensity increases. This temporary shift in identity is not escape. It is exploration. It allows individuals to experience versions of themselves that may not be accessible in daily life. Over time, these experiences can influence how a person behaves even outside ritual space. Witchcraft, therefore, does not only change what a person does, it changes what a person believes they are capable of becoming. Finally, transformation in witchcraft is deeply tied to meaning, making humans don't only seek survival or control, they seek significance. Witchcraft provides a framework in which personal experiences can be interpreted as part of a larger symbolic system. Life events become interconnected rather than random. Personal struggles become part of narrative growth, becomes intentional rather than accidental. In this way, witchcraft offers something fundamental, a sense that the self is participating in a meaningful unfolding of reality. To use magic, then, is not simply to attempt influence of external forces. It is to engage in the ongoing reconstruction of identity, perception, and meaning. It is to move through the world not as passive observer, but as an active interpreter of hidden patterns. And in that act of interpretation, the witch does not merely change outcomes. So after everything we have uncovered, one truth remains unsettlingly clear. Witchcraft was never just about spells, curses, or ritual. It was about survival in chaos, transformation of identity, and the human need to give meaning to the unseen forces shaping life. Whether viewed as psychological or as psychology, symbolism, or something deeper, magic reflects how people have always tried to control what cannot be controlled and understand what cannot be explained. The real question is not whether magic works, but why humans need it at all. Thank you for watching, and stay curious about the hidden patterns beneath and reality. See you in next video.